So, vipers permitting, hello and welcome. This actually is a very nice spot under this tree, which is quite thick above me, and well, just behind the camera, I'm sorry I can't turn it around, is the Indian Ocean. No people, nothing to disturb me except the snakes, which is why there's no people. And far from the crowds. Not that there are much crowds here, but a little bit out of civilization. So the day before Uposatha, tomorrow, I'm not sure if I'll get the opportunity to catch up with you then. I have to pay a visit to the hospital this evening just to check everything's okay, in which hopefully they'll release me and we carry on as normal. I'll try and let you know if there's anything different to that. But in the meantime, if we can continue with or look at some of your comments, talk about that, questions and answers, and I'll leave my usual Poya or Uposatha Day Sila talk perhaps for tomorrow night when I'm sitting, when it's after sun or towards sunset time, maybe, so that it's still light enough to be visible. We'll see how tomorrow goes. But today it's been head shaving and robe washing day. This is what happens the day before Uposatha for us monks. And if I can find them, there are plenty of comments and questions to be going on with. Forgive me, but I'm going to pick the easy ones today because it's my way of just getting back into the flow of things. I hope that's okay with you. Tomorrow we'll get into some deeper Dharma. But you must remember, if it seems a little sampapalapa, one of my favourite Pali words, useless talk, nonsense that I'm talking, and someone quite rightly has commented that in my last talk there was a lot of sampapalapa. He said it they said it quite respectfully, and I don't mind at all. I don't mind criticism. In fact, encourage it in the right way, as long as it's criticizing me and not the teachings of the Buddha, because that's not for me to argue. We can all either listen to the teachings of the Buddha, accept them, or choose not to. But you shouldn't, with monks, say, hey, no, the Buddha's wrong, and expect them to argue a point of view. I don't think it is our place to debate what is, after all, our commitment in life with others who don't have a similar view. Because from our view, we are trying to develop right view. And that isn't developed by exploring many other arguments against what we have found through our own personal experience to be, as it is, the truth of existence. So any recommendations for a monastery in Alabama? That's a wonderful question. No, I haven't, because I'm not even sure where that is. It's in America. But please Google that, and I think someone might have replied with a similar answer. I'm sorry, but I don't have a mental directory of all countries' monasteries. Whether there would be them there, I don't know anything about that place. Right. As someone who is only familiar with Buddhism through your videos, what, my videos? Okay, well there's a lot more to familiarize yourself with, of course, than what I've said. What would you recommend to a layperson as a good book to understand terms, rules, terms, rules and concepts? Do you know, actually, as a beginner's introduction to many of the suttas, many of the Pali words that are common, many of the teachings of the Buddha, many of the reflections, is really to look at the chanting. If you find a Buddhist chanting book, Theravada Pali chanting I'm referring to. I can't comment on other traditions. And I can send you a link for that if you haven't already found the Wat Marp Jan chanting book, which is in Pali and English. It's also available in Pali and Thai, but not many Thai people watch this. But this, the chanting book, these regularly chanted chants are very good summaries of all of this, what you're asking about the teachings, some of the summaries of the suttas, reflections we like to often reflect upon, some of the rules as in terms of the 5 precepts, the 8 precepts, the taking of refuge in the triple gem, the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. It's all there in a very concise and easy to read and understand form. You don't have to be interested in chanting, but this is of course how we learn about the teachings of Buddhism. This is Buddhism, of the teachings of the Buddha. This is how it was passed down initially, verbally, which is why in the sutras, which are very long, some of them, it's very repetitive to help reinforce the facts and help people remember when passing on these teachings verbally. And in the chanting, it's been very beautifully summarized into an easily chantable form. So that is as good a place as any to begin. But then of course you should look into the Sutta Pitaka, which is a collection of I think 5 or 6 books which are there in many languages nowadays, most languages I think translated into, and also available online for you to really read the word and get to understand the word of the Buddha himself. Why cheat Jesus? I don't know. Peace be with you. I'm not sure what that question means. So, can you say something concerning the resistance my mind creates when it's time for me to meditate, where it might come from, and how best to manage it? Oh, resistance. So yes, can you say something concerning the resistance my mind creates when it's time for me to meditate, where it might come from, and how best to manage it? Oh yes, gladly. And yes, there is very often, even with us well practiced, established in this form and this lifestyle of monks, sometimes this resistance will come up when we want to meditate. And let me finish your question. I meditate regularly and more often than not enjoy the experience, so I don't know why this resistance arises. Very good question. And it isn't just towards meditation. This resistance arises whenever you want to do something good. You may have a wonderful idea to go and stay on a meditation retreat, and then all of the excuses under the sun will arise. Your auntie has to go in for some surgery, or your uncle or your father has a special meeting and an important engagement he wants you to take him to. Your son's bar mitzvah or your daughter's final exams. You know, it could be any manner of things that seem to come up in the way of us doing goodness, us practicing good actions of body, speech and mind. Now, the answer to your question is, what is it that causes these, that creates this resistance? It is the kilesas, we call it. It is what we call, I think there's another question coming up similar to this actually, the defilements. So these are our root defilements of greed, hatred, delusion. So really wanting something too much, or wanting it just because it's so good, or really not wanting something so much that you hate it. Greed, hatred, and delusion is just really not understanding. It's just confusion. That's all it means. Greed, hatred, and delusion. These are the basis of the kilesas, or the basis of desire, wanting what we cannot have or not wanting what we have. And it is this that subconsciously is there at the root of causing that resistance. So we just sit to meditate and we think, maybe I should have just done this before I started. And it's an excuse, a reason to get up. Now, as to exactly why this happens, it is because of the way we have lived. Now, as I said, it can even happen to us practitioners as monks or nuns in our existence, which is primarily about the practice of meditation, but less so. So the more you practice, the less it happens. It's a very gradual and slow erosion of these defilements as we slowly break down these fetters, these ties to samsara, to worldly life, to this existence, and rebirth. I won't go into that now because I think that's coming up as a later question, perhaps for another day, but we are looking to become free from suffering in this lifetime and not to be reborn into samsara again. And one of the fundamentals of right view in this practice is the, not belief, but the understanding of rebirth, whether it be in the conceptual idea of after this body dies and being reborn, or having come from a place of living previously in some other form, or whether it be in the notion or the understanding of in each and every moment what we're doing here and now is leading through these 12 links of dependent origination, as I've spoken of in some detail in another video. If you just search 12 links of dependent origination English monk, then you'll see that the whole nature of rebirth comes from these 12 links of dependent origination, which is essentially ignorance. So that delusion I spoke of in these 3 root defilements, delusion, ignorance, leading to eventually jati, which is birth, rebirth. But there are 10 more links in between, from seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, seeing, understanding what something is, having an idea based on memory, then liking, disliking, wanting more of, getting attached to, craving, and rebirth, going on like this over and over again, moment to moment. And even when this body dies, this moment, this flow continues into being born again. Not like born again as your personality, but through your actions of body, speech and mind. This karma propels what is this mind, not the conscious think, not the intellectual thinking brain, not the mechanical computer of brain which coordinates our doing, our thinking, our cognitive activities, but the mind, that which knows, that can't be located. We know where our brain is, we know where the work's going on to keep things working in our bodies, even though we're not conscious of those activities that it is doing, and we can even accept our lack of control over that. But sometimes it's hard to differentiate between that and what is the mind, or in this Pali language we call the citta. And this citta or chitta, however you pronounce it, is very much something that is just not locatable. Where is your mind? Where is this citta? It's like the heart mind. It doesn't have a physical place in the body, inside or outside, but it knows. It knows when you're happy, it knows when you're sad, but it isn't happy, it isn't sad. It's just aware of that. And those emotions in the mind, in the brain, in the thinking brain, are there, observed and known by the mind. And this is how subtly these kilesas put this resistance in the way. But what we have to do is just be sure and know that the more we practice, the less that will happen, because you're developing wisdom and the skill and the ability to meditate. If you really want to give it a go, come to Sri Lanka and you can sit under one of these little roofs with the snakes for as long as you like, and the kilesas will try their hardest to make you get up, but there's really nowhere to go, nothing to do, so you're better off staying in the safety under your little roof and continuing with the meditation throughout the days, throughout the nights. You'll eat just once a day, like me, You can join me on Pindapat, and then you can just sit all day. You can even have a mosquito net if you like, but this is the way to really, really battle against those kilesas and show that you can resist that urge to put something in the way. Because after all, it's our decision, isn't it? So please, can you explain rebirth? That's for another talk. I have just given a trailer to the next Dharma talk, which might be on rebirth. Who knows? It might be on, it might not be at all after I see the doctor tonight. We don't know. It will be, I hope. But yes, that's certainly coming up. Okay, what's this one? So, on sexual desire, I'm not sure if that there's a question in here. There is at the end. After comparing it to hunger, you then say, but why sexual desire? Only a non-returner and an arahant would have no sexual desire. And you say, which I don't think any human beings on earth is nowadays. Otherwise there will be sexual desire, and I think it's natural. Just like being hungry, you can eat when you are hungry and feel no shame, but why for sexual desire? Well, actually it's a good question, so I'm going to properly, as I've read it, answer it. Okay, there are arahants, there are non-returners and arahants these days. Non-returners, yes, have probably extinguished those fetters of sensual desire, not sexual desire, sensual desire, which includes sexual desire and hunger. So all of these things, sexual desire, hunger, and the need for entertainment, anything to do with stimulation of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, or even thinking, are a form of sensual desire, not sexual desire, but sexual desire also, the need to procreate, all come under that same banner really of sensual desire, which is entirely eroded for a non-returner. You're quite right in saying, but you're not right in saying there are no non-returners and no arahants. There certainly are, but we don't know how many or where they are or who they are, but it is not the case that there are none on earth these days. And you think it's natural. Of course, everything is natural in terms of this, that's correct. Just like being hungry, yes, and as I've said, it comes under sensual desire. Like being hungry, you do have the need to eat food to keep the body going. However, it's not like being hungry in terms of if you don't procreate, you won't die. And nothing is going to badly happen to you. If you don't eat, you will die. So this is a big difference. As far as shame, you can eat when you're hungry and feel no shame. But why for sexual desire? Because you're hungry, you need to eat to survive, no problem. And with sexual desire, I'm not, or nobody in Buddhism is saying that one should feel shame for having sexual desire or having sexual intercourse itself. There's nothing wrong with that. Under the 5 precepts, the only rule is that there should be no sexual misconduct. The 3rd precept is quite specific. Only if you go to live in a monastery, stay in a monastery, or you ordain and become a monk or a nun, do you have to become celibate. And so there is no shame. And in fact, in Buddhism overall, we don't use or have really the understanding or the nature of this idea of shame or guilt. We have the wise understanding that if we do something wrong, there will be consequences. So we have consciousness, we have conscientious, we're conscientious of our conscience, okay, conscientious of our conscience. This we call in Pali hiri and ottappa, replacing shame and guilt. Nothing wrong with healthy relationships at all. Phra Dan, greetings from Brazil. Interesting, Brazil. I know a Brazilian monk. I was at Wat Mat Jan with him and another Brazilian. They went back to Brazil, and I think, I don't know, established a monastery there, maybe. Do you think ordination is the last step to take after an intensive practice of meditation and living according to the precepts, or can one ordain without too much practice? You can ordain without too much practice. It's not necessarily the last step. Let me read the question again. Do you think ordination is the last step to take after an intensive practice of meditation and living according to the precepts? Some people aren't able to ordain for one reason or another. I've spoken about that before, so I won't go into all of those now. But certainly, that doesn't mean you cannot become enlightened, free from suffering in this lifetime, become a once returner, non-returner, a sotapanna, once returner, non-returner, arahant, no problem as a lay person. It's more difficult, more distractions, harder to battle against these kleshas. You're not going to be sitting in the environment as I just described to you. You're going to be distracted by other things going on. So it's more difficult, but it's quite feasible. So this ordination isn't a necessity towards enlightenment, and it isn't either the final step, because many people ordain and maybe that they don't get any further in their practice. Some monks become monks for many other reasons, to help the monastery. Some have work. We have monasteries with work monks. They have monks who are electricians, plumbers, do some buildings things, even IT monks these days and things like that. Visa monks they even have in some big international monasteries. So, you know, it's they're not necessarily, they could be well practicing towards enlightenment, but they may not be feeling capable of achieving that in this lifetime. So it isn't necessarily the final step. Practice meditation, living in accordance with precepts. So the actual question is, or can one ordain without too much practice? Yes, you can ordain without too much practice, because it's best also when you ordain to write off what you've practiced isn't going away. This is your karma. This is your actions of body, speech and mind. You've created the causes and conditions for this moment that's arrived, this moment here and now. And if that is where you've arrived at the decision that I will now ordain, it's not the final step or the final stage of the practice, but it's because of your practice you've arrived at this decision, and it's supportive of that decision. So it's not unnecessary. However, all you think you know so far intellectually, so what you've read in books, what you've learned, that you should let go of. That you should forget all you've done in the world outside of the monastery. Listen to your teacher, listen to your elders, listen to your peers, your fellow monks, and just practice. Just watch the mind, watch the body, watch the breath, and understand what's going on there. This is how you become enlightened. Drop the bookwork, forget about all that, and get on with the practice. This is the ideal opportunity to practice. Next question, statement rather. Reincarnation is a lie. Well, I don't know, because we don't talk of reincarnation. Reincarnation implies that a personality, a soul, if you like, something of a permanent nature, is reborn in a different form. This is not Buddhism. In Buddhism we have rebirth, which means that you're born again, either into this next moment or in the next lifetime after the body dies. Rebirth is quite different in its than reincarnation, in that all that, and I don't want to go too much into this because this is the next talk, but all that is reborn is the results of the causes and conditions you have put in place, which is what you are doing right now in this present moment. So if you're listening to this video or listening to, or watching, obviously you wouldn't, if you're watching something else, hear me saying this, but doing something else, that is going to result in perhaps what happens next. So this is what a different thing. So I wouldn't go into the debate as to whether reincarnation is a lie or not. It's not part of Buddhism. Often it gets thrown in, and if you mean rebirth, that's a lie, then that is okay. It isn't a requirement that you believe in rebirth, but it is not right view if you do not see the consequences of karma. And when you see through your own experiences the consequences of karma, which just means actions, all of your actions of body, speech and mind, you see that that has cause and effect. That is the causes and conditions for what you are now. Then you are witnessing for yourself rebirth within this lifetime, and you cannot unsee that. It's there. You cannot say it's a lie. It's evident in that term alone, rebirth, not reincarnation, which means something different. You want to know about my thought process about becoming a monk? I think I've spoken of that at some length many times, so I'll have to leave that one for now. I'm sorry, but please, why I became a monk, as I think is the name of the video for that one. Maybe you've watched that video and I need to expand upon it, but I shouldn't really. Again, the reason, it wasn't a flashlight moment. I realise, yes, that you use the word realisation, but I don't use it in the same context of some awakening moment, but I just literally realised that acquisition is dukkha, renunciation is sukha. Dukkha is unsatisfactoriness, unhappiness or suffering. Sukha is happiness, and really this joy we get from the practice, of which acquisition is dukkha, renunciation is sukha, and this led me to ordination. But there are too many obstacles, right, Bhante? I am still in the lay life, and it drives me almost mad at times, because I want to find enlightenment, and this is my main goal in life, but the lay life is filled with so much nonsense. Well, how are you looking at this nonsense? You're looking at it from the point of view of your own kilesas. Ignore it. Sit in a quiet room, practice meditation, keep sila, the precepts, turn the TV off, turn the smartphone off, practice meditation, you'll develop wisdom. That's all you need to do. We only need to work on ourselves, and then by that we can also help everybody else. They will see the results of your practice, and they'll soon want to copy that. They'll soon want to share the development you have experienced yourself. Right, unless the next question is a very short one, I ought to wrap it up, I think, there. Maybe try, I don't really understand that one. Or that's a bit long. Oh, okay, finally, one more question. This is a short one to finish off with, because I think the sun has come around and is getting the phone. That's going to be, if it hasn't turned off already, it will do. I'm very sad so many people trust their dukkha that would never allow them to see the truth. Very sad that so many people trust their dukkha, trust their suffering. Well, don't trust firstly, please don't be sad. You just be happy, and then other people will see your happiness, and it's contagious. They'll be happy also. If you're practicing sila, samadhi, panya, keeping the precepts, practicing meditation, developing wholesome mind states, reducing unwholesome mind states, you will become happy, and they will be happy too. If you're laughing, they will laugh as well. They may not even know what you're laughing about, but they will be happy too. But don't be sad, firstly. Now, if they're trusting their dukkha, then this is just delusion, this is just not understanding, this is ignorance, and this is the cause, the first step. Sometimes it's called the last, but it's the first step of these 12 links of dependent origination, which is what all of this is based on, really. When you really get to the understanding, the bottom of those 12 links of dependent origination, and that is also very well described in the Pachittiya Samyupada Sutta in that same chanting book, if you want to look it up and go through it yourself in the Pali and the English. because it's very good summary of the 12 links of dependent origination. You'll see there why they're trusting that, but it's only as a result again of the same answer, this running thread through these questions today, of the kilesas. So at that I should leave it. I hope there's something useful there for you, and there wasn't too much sampapalapa as there might have been for some in the last talk. But in the meantime, if it's useful, please use it. If not, just let it go and don't think about it anymore, and be happy. I heard a rustle then. Stay well, and spread as much metta to the snakes here as possible for me, because I will be spending the night here, maybe tonight and tomorrow night and for some foreseeable future nights, whilst still returning to my little place down the road for Pindapata in the morning and the meal and the dana offerings. This is my perhaps place of practice, a place of abiding, as the Buddha would put it, for the time being. So be happy, stay well, and Sukhi Hotu.